What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. So, by now, the news of Carson Wentz being traded is out there. Everyone has had their suspicions and their feelings about this trade and how it went down. I think it's kind of important that we start to take a little bit of a dive into why it happened. For some people who are still trying to understand why the Colts made this decision to cut Carson Wentz, or to trade him rather, after just one full season with Indianapolis. I think I want to say that I was one of those people that thought there wasn't a reason to question Carson Wentz. Now, for that, I will say I was wrong. I apparently a lot of people know something about what happened rather than me, and we're about to get into this article that explains a little bit more. Zach Kiefer from The Athletic posted an article today. By the time this video gets out, it'll probably be a day or two after. But either way, he posted an article talking about how several people inside the organization have told him and others that there was a lot more to this decision than what your average fan would actually know. So, just to kind of put it bluntly and to start it out, really, this decision did not come down to the final 2 weeks of this season. There's a lot more that went into it than that. And that's the first line of Zach Kiefer's article. So I would encourage you to check that out if you haven't already.
Yeah, we don't want to we want people to go, subscribe to The Athletic. It's $1. Like, do it.
Yeah.
Go support Zach work.
Yeah.
It's great stuff. We're not going to cover everything in this article, so we highly encourage you to go check it out. But we're just going to kind of go through a few of the highlights, that were kind of put out there because, we don't want to infringe on Zach's work and kind of retell it, so.
Right. So, yeah, there is he basically talks a little bit about the deal and what went down and everything. So we'll skip over those details. But I think the biggest thing that we can look at here right off the top is, from what he stated, is that the issues with Wentz stretched all the way back before the season even started. There were some people in the building that grew frustrated with, and I'm quoting here, basically, one source said over and over through the course of the year that people grew frustrated at what seemed to be a lack of leadership, a resistance to hard coaching, and a reckless style of play, which had a role in several close losses this year. So all things that, seemed inevitable, and especially the play style thing. But, there were people questioning this off the top, Cody. And, you and I, we were willing to look past that at first because we thought that was more of a Philadelphia thing. We thought that was kind of an issue. Well, I mean, it sounds like there might have been some truth to some of what was being said. I mean, a lot of even some Colts podcasters were even mentioning that from the beginning of the year, and it turns out that there might have been some more merit to it than what we originally thought. I mean, it's crazy to think that all this is now coming out. I mean, Zach is saying it. Other Colts podcasters have said it. People have said it. Now the national media is grabbing onto that narrative. The Colts haven't said it, but do you think there's actual merit to that being said, that lack of leadership, resistance to hard coaching, and the play style being bad?
I mean, 100%. I think this is very accurate to Carson Wentz. And I think the thing, to be fair to us, we trusted in Frank Reich and his ability, to do that, and his relationship with Carson Wentz. Now, it was interesting because I was listening to Kevin Bowen's podcast, his kind of emergency pod that he had on this Carson Wentz trade. And, I thought he brought up a really good point that, Frank Reich knew Carson Wentz when he was a rookie in his first and second years. He had 3 or 4 years where they they weren't together, right? So I think that has some merit to it. Carson Wentz kind of seems like over the years, he kind of seems like he's got a little bit of an ego. Whether or not he says it, publicly, I think publicly he's a good person, but I just think he's just one of those guys stuck in his ways, and he's a guy that's never, unfortunately, and it feels like the Colts kind of came to the spot where they're he's never going to take the criticism. He's never going to do anything different. And so we don't want to be tied to a quarterback that, frankly, the word was reckless, right? And I don't blame them one bit. it's kind of like the whole idea of like, I think you talked about it, Derek, in the live stream. It's kind of like the whole idea of like a relationship. Like if it's not working, you'd rather end it then and know than extend it another year or another, give it another couple weeks or whatever it is, in a relationship. You'd rather end it there if it's not working out. For the long term, it's going to help you out. Now, immediately it might suck, right? It might be like, man, I don't have anybody, or I don't have the person that, and it can be very easy in a relationship and maybe even here to remember some of the good times, right? Because Carson Wentz had some good moments for sure last year with the Colts, right? And so it can be easy to remember those moments and be like, man, I wish we wouldn't have done that. But I think in the long term, him and just where the Colts were as a team and as an organization, what they wanted versus what Carson Wentz was, it just didn't work. Like he just didn't mesh there, right? It just felt like sometimes, with the criticism, like I feel like Frank Reich and this coaching staff, they can be very critical, right? And they should be very critical. I mean, this is a quarterback, for goodness sakes. And the fact that Carson couldn't take that criticism well, even with Frank Reich, I mean, it just kind of tells you, I don't think he's going to change as a player. He's probably too headstrong at this point if he's not willing to change now, even with a new, we thought it was Philadelphia. And I do think to some degree it probably was with the Philly media and stuff, but also it's Carson. Like, and I said this, Derek, you remember this, you can confirm this. I said this at the beginning of the last offseason when the Colts made the trade. I said, if Carson Wentz does not work out with the Indianapolis Colts, it is not on the Indianapolis Colts. It is on Carson Wentz. And that's exactly what happened. It's not a Colts thing. It's a Carson Wentz thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kiefer mentioned a couple times in this article that people have said that Carson Wentz was never the right fit. And even in some words, some people were saying that if Wentz wasn't the quarterback, that this little late season collapse that they had may not have actually happened at all. So, throwing some serious shade there at Wentz's ability to not only play, but, to lead this team to what they were wanting to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I even think they said in the, I know Ari on Twitter basically mentioned this, and I think it was like part of the headline of this article. There are points where Carson this offseason, right after the season ended, wanted to talk with Colts owner Jim Irsay to clear the air and try to get an understanding of where things were at. Supposedly, Jim Irsay declined to even talk to him.
Well, okay. I want to clarify because I think he didn't have the full, the article was updated. Basically, he couldn't talk to him because he was on vacation, but he did end up talking to him. So that was kind of a false thing there. He did end up talking to him. He just didn't talk to him in that moment, just to clarify.
Yeah. And then Frank Reich, obviously stated in the presser at the combine, I stuck my neck out for Carson Wentz. I gave hope to Irsay and to Ballard that I can make this work. And stated that Frank was having to basically apologize to the owner of the Colts for saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I thought I could make this work, and apparently I couldn't. So, just really went to show you that throughout the season, it really went to show you just how little trust they had in him at the end of the season from what they were getting from the whole picture. And, we were talking about Frank Reich at the end of the season was stating several times that the Colts didn't have a good offensive game plan a lot of times. They got stagnant because they didn't have a good offensive passing game plan. I wonder how much of that was a result of the rifting relationship between Reich and Wentz. I mean, I know that those two personally are on a great note, but again, your personal relationship and what you do in business a lot of times is completely different. And when we know that trust is getting lost there on the business side, I don't want to throw accusations out there because I don't know, but it makes me wonder, did Reich, like, not purposefully, but like sometimes ignore putting Wentz in the right spot because he just didn't have much trust in him?
Or did he ignore holding Wentz accountable? That's my question. I think he did. I think he honestly did. It seems very like, because Jim Irsay, I mean, he was very upset. Like he said, we've allowed and I've allowed doubt, fear, and a lack of faith to slip into our DNA, and it will not stand, And he also even said, like, we want more warriors. And it's pretty obvious that Carson Wentz was not one of those warriors. So I mean, I think Jim Irsay basically said, Frank, I think he called him out. I do feel like he called him out and said, Frank, you didn't hold Carson accountable, and that needs to change, whatever that looks like. Obviously, I don't think the Colts had made a decision yet because it was right after the season. Emotions were high, but I don't think Frank, honestly, did enough for Carson. Like, he didn't hold him accountable, and who knows, maybe he tried, and Carson didn't respond well to it.
Mhm.
We don't have all the details, but it seems like it's one of those two scenarios there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could have been a combination of both. Maybe
Yeah, could have.
Reich did it. Wanted to do a little bit of ignoring what was going on, and also kind of just ignoring the game plan to revolve around Wentz because he just didn't feel like doing it. Maybe there was a point in that. Again, we don't know this, but we're just kind of basing it off of what we're reading. And going off of what we know now, the Colts traded away Carson Wentz without a clear plan B to be set into place, right? I mean, we're quarterbackless at this point. The only quarterback we have on the roster to fill that spot is our 6th-round draft pick from the 2021 class, Sam Ehlinger, who was a rookie last year. So it really went to show you, and Kiefer mentioned this as well, really goes to show you just how determined the Colts were to get rid of Wentz. If you're willing to give up the only real quarterback you have on the roster without a clear plan B in mind, that just goes to show you they knew they were going to get rid of him. It was just a matter of when.
Yeah, it has to have gone beyond football. Like, at this point, like, you just don't get rid of a quarterback. Like, I know Wentz had his moments where he was bad, like especially the last, couple weeks of the season. But like, I feel like if he had the right mindset, and if the Colts felt like he was stood for all the things they stood for, right? And like they respected him as a player, they wouldn't have traded him. They would have at least stuck it out another year. That's why we were saying, why are you going to cut him? Right? Why are you going to trade him? He was not great, but he was, who else are you going to get? That was our argument. You remember, like, only a few weeks ago, but it's obvious that they didn't believe in Carson as the leader. And if you don't believe in the quarterback as your leader, I don't care how talented he is, he's not the guy to lead you. And I think that's just kind of what it is, Derek. They just did not believe in Carson as the leader. Maybe as the guy, as a human, great person. But as the leader of your football team, when players like Phillip Rivers, players like Andrew Luck, heck, even players like Jacoby Brissett rose to the occasion, Carson Wentz, what did he do? He shrunk in the situation. He didn't rise up, and he didn't take leadership. And if your quarterback's not going to do that, you don't want him as your quarterback. I mean, I think it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, it really does go to show just, again, how much that they wanted him out, because it's incredible the value that Chris Ballard got out of Carson Wentz with the way they were talking. I mean, you have mentioned it to me several times. You've mentioned it to me several times, and I haven't really listened to or grasped just how important it is. You mentioned Phillip Rivers when he officially retired from the NFL. That few weeks prior, they were saying, we want Phillip Rivers to be back. We think that if we can bring him back and we improve this team just a little bit more, we think we got a potential contender here. And then, you look at the difference here, and, not only were they unwilling to commit to Carson Wentz going forward after the season, immediately after the season ended, they went against their own philosophy and were adamantly saying that they don't know still whether or not they're going to keep him around. I mean, and again, shows the remarkableness of Chris Ballard even exposing his hand and was still able to get that much draft capital out of Carson Wentz. I mean, from what I was reading, it sounded like Washington originally was only going to give Indianapolis a 4th and a 6th for Carson Wentz. That was it. But then the Russell Wilson deal fell in, and they got really desperate, and then they started picking up the trade talks, and they started to ask for a little bit more. And again, Ballard and his magic, being able to somehow convince Washington to take all that contract and to still get draft capital out of it. It just goes to show you, man. I don't, there's not a whole lot more I've taken from this article. Did you have anything from it that you saw that I haven't mentioned yet?
No, I mean, I think we covered most of it, just talking about, like, man, Carson Wentz must really not have been a good leader last year for the Colts to go this drastic. But no, it was interesting. Like, we never thought that any team that the Colts traded, Carson Wentz to would take on that huge contract. It's actually quite amazing that at the end of this, Derek, the Colts gave away a first, it ended up being a first and a third. And then now they're going to recover. They're going to get a third round pick this year.
And they're going to Washington's second.
They're going to get a better second round pick this year and potentially another second next year. So actually, it's not that bad.
It wasn't terrible. And then on top of it, for Washington to take that contract.
Yeah. And now you
have the most
70.5.
You have the most cap in the NFL by a wide margin. I mean, that's incredible because now, we'll talk about it we'll talk about it. We've either talked about it in a previous video. Not sure if this one's getting up before the video that we did or not. But we in another video, we'll talk about the quarterback situation and where the Colts go from there. But now, even though you don't have a quarterback, you feel much better about we got more money now. We can now we have a much more direct path on what we think we can do from this point forward. So yeah, a great read here, guys. If you want to check out this article by Zach Kiefer, we highly encourage you to do it. Like we said, we've basically covered the majority of it, but if you want to know a little bit more of the fine details,
there's a lot
more fine details in there that we haven't exactly mentioned. But again, it was a good read. Again, it really opened my eyes a lot because I was kind of blinded to the idea that there was some kind of leadership or lack of coaching boundary there. Judging by the players' reactions, obviously they all respected Carson Wentz. At least they say that out loud on social media and everything else. But yeah, apparently, the player relationship was good there. But, when it came to the coaches and the management and the owner, obviously Carson Wentz just was not getting the job done. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let us know your thoughts on this article and what it says about Carson Wentz. Either way, we're moving on. It's time to look for that next big thing for Indianapolis, and we certainly hope that it'll work out for us. Thank you guys again so much for the continued support. Greatly appreciate it. And as always, go Colts.